This is Creative Banter. As Ben celebrates 4 years as a full-time landscape photographer, we discuss the small changes in life that can make a large difference. We pull threads as we contemplate how careers will shift with the introduction of AI, and we ponder the effects of immediate gratification on what tasks we choose to focus upon. Our artist of the week is Sho Hoshino. Let's dive right into this, shall we?
Smashing that record button as we speak. And I just ran out of tea, but I think I will survive. Very poor planning on my part, but I think I can power through this.
We'll see. By the end of it, you'll just start to peter out.
Yes. At the towards the end of last week's episode, I had mentioned that I was waiting for this lawnmower to show up.
Right.
So it's supposed to be one of the better real type push mowers. So just after we finished recording, I put it together and I went out and I mowed the lawn. It was nice. It was really nice. It was when I was growing up, we had a real style lawnmower because it wasn't a very large lawn. And so that's what we would use. And I would always have to get like this running start with it. And then you just plow through the grass and eventually it just slows down. But this one's made by Fisker. It's supposed to be one of the better of those types. And it's geared so that it's no real different pushing that than just pushing like a regular lawnmower.
Okay.
And when we got this house, it came with a gas mower, like a Craftsman gas mower, which I've used for a long time, but I've always felt a little bad about it. From one standpoint, it's, I'm just using gasoline when it's like I'm pushing this thing. I don't really need to consume fuel to do that. But also it's loud. It's kind of annoying, and I end up waiting until like 9 in the morning or so before mowing the lawn. Just to be neighborly and such.
Right.
But when I was out using this real mower, I'm like, this is no different to push than the regular lawnmower, and it's a quiet experience. It's just so much nicer. And so I'm really, really enjoying this. And I think it fits so much better with some of the other, changes I've done, because I've been thinking about it. And a year ago, my wife and I were just starting to think about doing some composting. And then it was not, then, a little after that, eventually started doing like the plant-based stuff. And then once you start doing the plant-based stuff, you have the ability just to take all of your, leftover scraps and stuff and put it directly in the compost because it's all plant-based, no meat or dairy or anything. And so we've been composting quite a bit. And now with this mower, it seems like it's just another one of those things to check off the list in terms of those small changes that you can make that actually do make a difference. So it's actually been quite nice. So it just goes to show that there are those small things that we can do that actually, can make an impact. So I've been enjoying that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I couldn't imagine using one of those push mowers, whether gas powered or human powered, on the property that I'm living at right now, or just because we have like 6 acres. And
it would grow in again by the time you mowed it all with a push mower.
I think it takes my dad something like 3 hours on the tractor that we have, the ride-on tractor that we have. Just to do it. And it's all downhill. Like we live on top of a hill essentially. So there's no way. But I definitely agree about those small changes. Like I've been thinking about making a nice sized garden out in the back, because we have a section of our property that we don't use for really anything. And so I'm like, instead of letting that kind of go to waste or grow up and then whatever, I've decided that I'm going to plan out a garden out back there for this year. And as part of that plan, I put in my dad and I built this compost bin that just sits out there, and I just throw scraps in every so often, every week or so. And just nothing that could be used for this year probably, but by this time next year, it'll be ready that I can supplement the soil with it and everything and get everything, all the nutrients and everything back together for the next gardening season.
That's cool. Anything in particular you're thinking about growing in there?
Just the basic stuff. I mean, I make a lot of sauces these days for like pasta. So a lot of tomatoes and going to be doing obviously a lot of like lettuce and kale and that kind of stuff. Like I said, just the basics and see where it goes from there. Something to start off with.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, we don't really have the space for a garden like that. We have like a side yard, but it doesn't get very good light. We have a very small backyard, which is mostly a deck. And so in our front yard, there's two lawns divided by a footpath. And then around the outside, there's, I have some like flowering bushes and stuff. And just not really well suited for, to be growing food and stuff. But I did plant some native wildflowers this year, some California poppies.
Okay.
And they're basically weeds. So you just throw seeds on the ground and magically you have flowers. But it's just kind of cool to, again, another change of just, having some like flowering native plants there that the bees are loving and stuff like that. So, just ordered seeds on Amazon for like $9 and just threw them on the ground and boom, there you go, wildflowers.
Yeah.
So just, one more of those things to maybe have a good impact. The other thing too that I've learned is that it's really methane is one of the worst things when it comes to the climate change. And in the past, when I would mow the lawn, and especially during the summer months when it grows really fast, you end up throwing that in like the greenery bin that we have here that gets picked up once a week. But they mostly just take that and they put that on top of the trash and bury it, which then just becomes methane.
Yeah.
So I can take that and I can throw that in the compost bin and it will eventually become, really good soil to work with, and it doesn't release any methane in the process. So you'd think that there'd be more education about this sort of stuff out there. But it's you really have to hunt down that information and learn it yourself. So it is kind of a strange disconnect in that way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate like you said, the education system just isn't, like you would think, like each state for, say, science classes or so would be very, or at least could be very environmentally conscious in terms of teaching about like you do a biology class and it should be about the local area's biology and like going out on trips. Like, could you imagine how fun it would be to take a group of kids out and teach them about the local like ecosystem and truly show them like this is the river and let's talk about what lives in the river and like pick up rocks and like more hands-on creative type of learning. But instead you're sat in a class watching YouTube videos and taking down notes about stuff that ultimately doesn't have any impact on your life, like on a local, in local terms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, in other topics as well, I mean, like, for example, when I was going to high school, you'd think at some point they would have a day when people from various, professions would come in to work and say, this is what I do for a living. This is the education that got me here. And this is how much I make a year. I mean, just simple things like that in terms, I mean, obviously not from an environmental standpoint, but just from the standpoint of, oh, so you go to school for this and then you get this job and you earn this much. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. There's like this weird disconnect when it comes to the financial stuff as well as environmental stuff. But
I mean, I don't know.
It's weird.
I think back to ninth grade, and ninth grade was when we moved to this new house and a new school district, and everything shifted and changed. But they had, like most schools, they had like partnership with tech school, and I didn't know about like anything of what this tech school offered. It wasn't like common knowledge or really even told to me. It was just, yeah, we have this offering, and that's it. Like, look it up on your own to see what classes and stuff are offered by it. And for the most part, I just thought that, tech school is well, you have all the girls that go for cosmetology and you have the guys that go for diesel, like to be a diesel tech or carpentry.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that it had stuff to do with, like, if you wanted to be a veterinarian, that you could go through that stuff to be a vet tech. Or if you had interest in, like, computer science and that kind of deal, and, like, all of these different classes that they offered through there that I would have had interest in had I actually known and it had been told to me. And which would have made my, not only my high school career in terms of, like, finding a group of people that I had commonality with, but also my college career, it would have made it a hell of a lot easier, where I wasn't struggling to try and figure out, well, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And try and find out, well, you got to know by the time that you're 18 or 20, like, what are you going to do? So,
yeah, I actually heard something on the radio the other day. They were talking about how, I think it's in response to how college has been held up to a certain level where it's just like, oh, this is what you have to do. And then, the whole issue with the predatory student loans and everything associated with that. And they're saying how with, Gen Z coming up, how there's a little bit of a change in things where people are looking more at going into the various trades where it's like, oh yeah, you'll get trained to be a welder or this or that. And then you have a guaranteed job and you're going to make very good money right out of the gate. And you're going to have a career and all this sort of stuff. Because it's so much more attractive than, going to school for something that doesn't necessarily lead to a career, or at least leads to a very difficult to get career. And so it does give me a bit of hope as far as, seeing that coming about, because it really does make so much more sense, especially in contrast in many ways to, you'll hear from time to time or younger people are like, oh, I want to be an influencer for a living. It's like, really? That's not, I want to be a baseball player. Yes. I don't know. It's weird, but I'm glad to see more emphasis in the trades, because that's also something that is so much more resistant to the whole AI thing.
Yes.
And, jobs that can be easily taken over by a computer that can also paint a lovely portrait in the style of, some famous artist. I don't know. It's going to be a strange future that's ahead of us. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, the trades thing is something that is definitely needed. And again, that's something that I would have considered more if the options were really laid out to me in like a more straightforward path. But like you said, we hold a college education on such a pedestal that the trades are therefore looked down upon. And like, even if you do want to go into the trades, well, it's still recommended by so many different people to get a degree in business or marketing or something else to help supplement that, which to a certain extent still makes sense, because like one of the big ideas of going into trades is that, you'll make good money doing the trade working for someone else, but eventually you'll probably want to make up your own business and run it yourself, because that's really where the really good money comes from, of course. But still, it's just, I don't know, it's just unfortunate. But like you said, it's going to be interesting in the next 5, 10, 15 years or so to see, are we going to see a shift back towards the trades and apprenticeships for careers and such after high school? Or are we still going to rely on college to educate people for jobs that, as you say, are ultimately going to be replaced by AI and the masses? So,
and also, I mean, like the more we go down the road in terms of, it used to be that one could fix things themselves. They'd have the skill set to do so and everything. And things have gotten increasingly more, technical from that standpoint, to the point where most people are fairly incompetent when it comes to simple household things, because they're focusing on other things. So it seems like that's only going to be things will be growing when it comes to the trades and stuff. I was also thinking about how so we're recording this in the very, very early part of April, and I was just thinking about how a couple of weeks ago when it was mid-March, that marked the 4 years since I started doing the photography thing full time.
Wow. It's been that long already?
I know it's weird. And I was also thinking about how it was in 2017 that I came up with the plan of scaling back my day job, taking off one day a week off the work week until eventually I was doing it full time. So I've been doing this full time longer than it took for me to come up with that plan and start working my way down to doing it full time. It's just weird. It's weird how fast time goes by, but here we are. And I don't know. It's an interesting experience to be in this position now with this perspective. And I'm very happy to be doing this as a job. And the other thing that I've realized is that I do have more. I mean, I work very hard at what I do, but I also have more time to pursue other things on the side that I didn't have before. So that's something I'm very fortunate to have. Like if I was still working the full-time day job, I probably wouldn't be into cycling. I probably wouldn't be able to. It would be much more difficult to do the plant-based thing. So I think those are some of those other life changes that have occurred, as a result of being able to do the photography thing full time. But yeah, it's weird how time just flies by like that.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about too, it's for me, having gotten a taste of being a quote unquote full-time photographer, or whatever you want to consider my position as it currently stands, having gotten a taste of that, it's very difficult for me to go through the job hunt and really hunt for a job, even though there are obvious benefits to it, like especially the health insurance aspect and the better pay, to all of that. Yeah. But
pay in general is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it still makes it very difficult to go through that job hunt and have that realization that all this freedom that I have now, that a lot of it I'm wasting away with, really, is going to be taken away in a heartbeat if I get a job. Like, even if I get some part-time retail position or whatever to hold me over to supplement income, whatever, it still takes away a ton of time that I currently have access to that, like I said, I'm just letting slip by. And it's just a very weird feeling and a very weird position to be in. Because like I said, I, of course, want that extra income. I want that health insurance that we somehow, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, tie to a job, but that's a whole other conversation.
Exactly.
It's just, I don't know.
So do you think that if, at some point when that job comes down the line and you jump on it, do you think it will give you more appreciation for the spare time that you have at that point in time compared to how you view that time now?
One would hope so, but in reality, in practice, I don't know. I can't say for sure. And of course, as we've talked about in the past, that all comes back down to making a better routine, forming better habits of like more regular writing and such. But I don't know.
Yeah. Because you would think that you would think that it would. I mean, at least for my case, when I was trying to do the photography stuff while working the full-time job, I found myself getting up early and working on things. And suddenly I made that hour, very productive, and which ended up being a good thing. But also that's just something that matches my way of working. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, one would think that you would probably embrace having that time at that point, but obviously it's hard to say. How was it when you were in school? Because obviously you had all kinds of projects you're working on stuff. How did you experience having any sort of time off at that point in time?
I was just thinking about that, like between when I was back in school and when I was like over the summers when I was working. I can't really say that I got done any more then than what I'm getting done now, which of course is like not a good thing.
Yeah.
I have so much more time and I'm not getting done any more work. But it's also sort of difficult to say because, as we've always talked about, like long-term growth and everything, the other fact is that my responsibilities over the past year or so have shifted. I wouldn't say super dramatically, but they've at least shifted quite a bit in terms of my role with NPN becoming more involved with that, and obviously maintaining this podcast and the other little things that I do that fill my time each week. So yeah, so I think that's really what makes it so difficult to say whether, like, how I would adjust my time and how I would go about things if or when a traditional job comes along.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have a hard time sitting still and not doing anything, but at the same time, there are times when I'm forced into that, which is very nice. So like my wife and I are now planning a vacation. It's actually towards the early part of 2025. So it's a ways out, but we're going to go back to Hawaii.
Okay.
And we found this really cool beach house, like literally like right on the beach in an area that's not very, it's not like a super popular beach. So it's not going to be like, crowded with tourists. People in the reviews for the place are saying, yeah, we saw 3 people on the beach today. So, that kind of stuff. But when we went to Hawaii last time, we had Wi-Fi, we had a cell signal. We'll have that again, but just sitting out on the balcony and just watching the ocean and just having my body just like fully relax. And I very quickly went into the mode of, I don't have to do anything today. I also don't want to do anything today. I just want to sit here and watch waves. And so I was very easily to flip. It was very easy for me to flip that switch, when I was in that setting. But that's a hard switch to flip, back home. I'll sit in the hammock for a while and I'll just, enjoy the day. But I have to make a point of doing that. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, I want to go mow the lawn, or I want to go, transplant some plants in the front yard, or something like that. So that switch is there. I just have to flip it with intention. But then I'm pretty happy just doing nothing and staring into the oblivion. It is quite nice. It is quite nice,
I think my struggle comes with flipping the switch the opposite way. Not so much that it's like I have all of these ideas of things that I want to do and all of these articles and such that I want to write and book projects that I want to make, but it's between just the general shitty weather. I mean, it's been downpouring the past like 3 days, and the past 3 days prior to that even. And then on top of that, when it comes to like poor mental health and the constant desire to be overstimulated by like your phone or by technology in general, trying to flip that switch from I'm overwhelmed and so therefore I don't have the energy to do anything, flipping that over to I want to do all this stuff and actually put money where my mouth is kind of deal, and get moving on some of this stuff. That's for me where that difficulty really lies. And I think it's just a matter so we're recording this on a Wednesday instead of our usual Thursday, because from Thursday evening until sometime Sunday afternoon or so, I'm going up with Emmy and my girlfriend to the property for the first time since the end of November or so, I want to say. So it's been quite a while. And going up for a long weekend, and the whole purpose of this that I want to try and implement, because I don't really know how nice the weather's going to be up there. I mean, we're going about 100 miles north of us, so it's still not as warm, not as sunny, possibly, whatever. I have no idea how it's going to be, and I don't really care, because the whole purpose of it is going up there and just relaxing, getting away from everything. And even if that everything is simply going to a new spot and trying to implement these new intentions. And so I'm hoping that from just this long weekend, I can sort of start focusing more on my writing and get back into the swing of things and start implementing some sort of groove. And especially being surrounded by trees and by the lake and by nature in general, and having that more tranquil setting, I think is definitely going to help me. But I'm just hoping that I'm able to keep it going. You know what I mean? That I'm able to bring that productivity and that's those habits and everything back home with me when I come back Sunday night into Monday and continue going on with that flow.
All right. If you absolutely force yourself to take the first step to do whatever task it is that you want to do things start to fall in line a little bit after that? Like if you just absolutely force yourself, like I'm going to write, get the pen out and just force yourself, even if you're not feeling it. Does it start to flow after that?
It does typically, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a lot of it is that initial motivation.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that initial hurdle that you have to get over that I often stumble upon, and I may sit down and start writing out some things, but I often find myself just tripping and falling flat on my face and going back to something that's not as difficult, that's more immediately gratifying than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, because for me, obviously, I don't have the same sort of situation. But if there's a project that is hanging over my head, I find that there's a very small barrier that I have to overcome, and then I'm good with it. And it sounds like for you, it's a larger barrier to overcome in order to get into that flow state. But like I have the various Patreon rewards that I need to get mailed out, and I'm a little bit behind schedule on that, just because. And this is the Patreon for the YouTube channel,
right?
And because typically I go on my winter trip in like late January. And then I'm usually wrapped up by at some point in mid-February. But this year, the weather was weird, so I was still in the field into March. So everything's behind about a month or so. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, this stuff should have been done by March, and here we are in April. But meanwhile, it's just the normal schedule when it comes down to it in terms of the timeline and stuff. But I went and I picked up the supplies for it, and then I just sat down yesterday and started working on it. And then I found that at that point, I actually kind of was enjoying the process of going through all the work that's involved. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but once it's done, it'll feel great. But I do have to force myself over that first little hurdle, and then I kind of get into that flow state. But obviously, it's going to be different in your situation, where it'll take a bit more work to get into that mindset.
Yeah, and I mean, I can go through, and it also depends on the tasks. Like
that's true. Yeah.
I can go through and do something that's more like physical in the sense of like writing letters or like packing up prints or whatever, like editing photos even. I can get over that hurdle a lot easier with stuff like that than I can with something like writing. Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do, it's kind of in two parts. Like the one side of it is that there's that very immediate gratification of I can get a photo edited and see the end result of it printed out, and I can hold that and be like, yes, this is it. I'm happy that work, like the work that I put into it, is seen fairly quickly, like within an hour or whatever it takes. But when it comes to writing, it's not seen as quickly because there are a lot of drafts that you go through. The first draft is always awful and no good, and you want to throw it in the fire immediately. But then you also have the second side of things, where during editing, I'm not second guessing all of my decisions with it, because I can see what everything is. I can see the end result like very clearly with editing photos. Yeah. But with writing, I'm always second guessing everything. And unless I really get into that flow state where it's just stream of conscious writing around a topic, then it gets very difficult for me to even get close to the finish line or the halfway point, because every single step along the way, I'm just thinking, well, this is no good. This sentence is no good. I need to revise it right away. Yeah. And obviously that's a hurdle that everyone who does any regular amount of writing has to go through on a daily basis. But it's still a matter of getting through it.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I have a hard time with writing. I'm just not, that's not my skill set. And for me, it comes down to two things. There's a thought in my head that I just can't get out on paper. I can't distill it down to something that's simple enough, but that thought exists in my head. And that's a frustrating one because I'm like, I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
But there's other times when I don't know what that thought is. What am I trying to say? What is the point of this? And I'm like, I feel like there's something there, but I can't figure out what that thought is. And sometimes just by writing things down, just typing random or writing on a piece of paper, eventually I can kind of figure out what that is. But those have been my two struggles with writing, and it's why it takes me so long to do something that should be very simple. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I don't really, for me, it's very difficult to write like an article for a magazine or something like that. I know it's going to take me so much time and effort, and I'll be sitting there and I won't even know. I'll either know what I want to say, but I can't say it, or I just won't know what I even have to say. So I think that's why I turned down a lot of the writing stuff, because I just know it's going to be a struggle for me in that sense.
Yeah, so I have an article that's due technically today for On Landscape.
Yeah.
And I've been procrastinating with it, something fierce. But I went through and I wrote a basic draft of something and sent it over, and just to get an idea of like, is this good? Like, should I keep going with this kind of deal? Just to get secondary feedback on it. And it's funny because I've been finding myself in this kind of situation a decent amount this year so far with my writing, where I write something up, I send it over to the editor or whoever, and almost as soon as I send it over and those thoughts around what I just wrote start to kind of better articulate themselves in my head, I'm like, wait a minute, scrap that idea. I'm going to pull certain threads from what I had sent over, and I'm going to write out something that's much more in line with what I wanted to write originally, that actually has a better point to it, that ultimately is a better article. And I found this with the draft that I just sent over that I'm going to be completely recutting up and redoing.
Yeah.
And I also found it with what I wrote for the 4th issue of Nature Vision magazine, that I couldn't sleep one night. So I got out of bed and just sat at my computer and just stream of consciousness wrote for an hour and a half. Printed it out, set it down at my desk, and I'm pretty sure I just sent that straight off to our copy editor and just was like, give me your thoughts on this. Let me know what your ideas are around this. This is all stream of consciousness. Like, there's a lot in here that won't be included into it, but ultimately I need to be able to send it to someone and have that sort of fear maybe of someone else is looking at this, so it better be good sort of deal. But I don't know, like it's weird how that's been happening more recently, and I just wonder if that's more of a tell in terms of how I would best go about writing and building back up this habit of more continuous writing, where I just sit at the computer every morning or whatever, and I just write for an hour or an hour and a half or however long, and just not really on any topic in particular, but just write. At the end of the hour, I print it out and then come back to it later on that day and pull threads from it and see what sticks, and then go into writing like an actual article based on that. But I have no idea.
And you had mentioned that time when you couldn't sleep, so you just, got up and started writing. Has that happened in the past where just, middle of the night you had, very successful writing in terms of just getting what was in your mind on the paper successfully? Or was that just like a more of a one-time thing?
No, it happens pretty often. And I almost always regret it. Like the other night, I think Emmy woke me up around like 4:00 in the morning to go out and couldn't fall asleep. Nothing that I did was helping to fall asleep. And my mind was just racing with how to formulate an article. And I'm still kicking myself in the ass a bit about it because I didn't get out of bed and write.
I know you lose that, almost like forgetting to dream kind of.
Yeah. So I know that would have been the article for On Landscape for this upcoming publication or wherever they're putting it. But I didn't get out of bed and I didn't write it. And so I It's the same feeling as like when you walk away from a composition that you're like hemming and hawing about and just you're not quite sure if it's right, and then you walk away from it and the moment's gone and you're like, I should have gone back. I should have taken that photo. It's that same feeling. And it's just a matter of trusting your gut and realizing like that's hour of sleep that I'm going to miss out on is probably worth it for the article that I'm going to put out. Like for trusting my gut here. Like I can go back and take a nap later on during the day if I'm still tired.
Do you consider yourself more of a morning person or a late night person?
It changes all the time.
Okay.
I mean, when I started working and getting up around like 5 or 6 in the morning every morning, I very quickly became a morning person. And I still think that for the most part I am, but because like now I'm tired and ready for bed by 9:30 at night. But looking back in the past, I used to stay up till like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning playing video games or just doing whatever because I preferred being up at night. But the real world kind of kicked that out of me. And now I have freedom and just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very much a morning person naturally. My wife is more of like a night owl. And so, you know, when I was in college, I could, if I had big project that I was due the next day, I could pull an all-nighter. I could work on it. I would just be completely like useless the next day. So, I mean, but you know, if I get up early, I feel rejuvenated. I feel like I can take on some big project, which I think is also why I enjoy going on the early morning drives. It's just something about it. I love it. But you also wonder, like, if you were to figure out, you know, hey, maybe like writing late at night is a good thing, you know, maybe find some ways of making that more of a thing. But I also don't think that that's something that, you know, it's not like you can schedule that necessarily. It's just one of those creative moments when your mind is just giving you all this sort of stuff and you know, try to make good use of it.
Yeah. And the other problem too for me, like I wake up, I try to get up around like 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 when my girlfriend's getting ready to leave for work. And I prefer to be at the gym around that time, like shortly thereafter, because there's so many fewer people that are at the gym.
Oh, for sure,
I don't have to deal with anyone in the morning like that. Whereas if I get at the gym by like today, like 9:30 in the morning, it's packed. And I'm like, first of all, why aren't any of you at work? Like, I'm the only one that doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's struggling with a job, and this is all my own making. And but I'm like, so that's the big issue with me. If I were to go back into my night owl habits of staying up late, even if it is for solid creative output, then I have to deal with people in the morning when I go to the gyms or I go to the gym. And I just don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah. And actually, when you mentioned, you know, seeing everyone at the gym when, you know, they should be at work, you know, I do sometimes wonder what my neighbors think about me, because I'm just out just like, you know, watering the flowers at midday. I dress up in my little spandex outfit. I go ride my bike for a while. It must seem like I do absolutely nothing for a living. So I do kind of wonder how they're secretly judging me behind the scenes.
Yeah, but I mean, like if they're seeing you around the house all the time, then that still makes sense because like, oh, he just works from home, and like that's true. So that's very commonplace these days. So it still makes sense. But to like be 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, and to be working out of the gym for 2 hours or whatever, like that's prime work time. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. Whatever. You do you.
Yeah. But so do we have a photographer for the week?
We do. So let me send you over his website. He is a Japanese photographer this time. Still in the nature realm. Mm-hmm. Where's our chat here? All right. So this week we have Sho Hoshino, who is a Japanese nature photographer, mainly working in color, and just has some
very cool,
just beautiful photographs. I found him mainly through there's another photographer, Mark Davis, who has been living over in Japan for a while, and was just interviewed by Matt on F-Stop Collaborate and Listen, and he had mentioned how him and Sho go out and into the woods, and really how the culture around photography and nature in Japan is so dramatically different than what it is in the States or really anywhere else, where like he used the example of when was it the World Cup or the Olympics, something was hosted, I think in Japan, and the Japanese side of like where all of the Japanese individuals were seated to watch this event, at the end of it was the most clean section out of the entire stadium. And it was like, it made national news and all of that. Just the whole culture over there is different, but it's also where the concept of Shinrin-ryoku, or forest bathing, had derived from. And you can really see that in a lot of Sho's work, the attention to the little details, even in some of these wider scenes that he shows in the forest and otherwise. Just really, really brilliant. I've also been watching his, he does a YouTube channel as well. And it's not the traditional landscape vlog style where you have talking to the camera or anything. It's more like you are getting a sort of a spider on the wall or fly on the wall kind of look at his process. And you're joining him and just walking alongside of him as he's going out into nature and taking these beautiful photographs. Yeah.
I'm looking at the trees gallery right now, and the third image from the top has these like backlit deciduous trees with some wildflowers in the foreground, kind of a hazy atmosphere. Some of the leaves are backlit. Really beautiful. And it's such a perfect looking image that I almost look like it looks almost AI. And this is very much a compliment, but it looks so pristine and like such wonderful light. And then some other ones where there's some very misty conditions with some trees, some fascinating kind of badlands in the background behind some pine trees. Really beautiful, very clean work. And it's polished, but it's not so polished that it looks unreal. And so it's a very, it shows plenty of sometimes you when you see a photo where it's like just this perfect tree on a green hill or whatever, it can seem almost unrelatable, but his work is very relatable, looks very real, and really, 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 really beautiful work. I'll have to check out some of these other galleries as well. But yeah, beautiful work. Oh, now I'm looking at the Autumn Gallery. And actually, some of the pictures in the Autumn Gallery remind me of some of the images I've seen from the UK, with some the ferns and stuff in the foreground that have turned color, and sparse leaves on some sort of birch or aspen looking trees. Really, really beautiful work. Very clean, very calm, very quiet images, which is right up my alley.
Yeah, I figured as much. It's just, I don't know, all of this talk about Japan in particular, I've always been fascinated with that country and with the culture, and it's definitely a place that I am trying to figure out how to get over to for a week or a month or forever. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. There's something different about it that we just don't have access to here, especially around that culture of nature, like the respect for nature. Like in that interview that I mentioned, Mark was talking about how when he first started photographing nature with Sho and some of these other guys that he had met up with over there, that they'd get to a location, they really wouldn't talk or anything, and they'd just split off. And they'd maybe come back hours later with 2-3 photographs that they had taken. Yeah. And meanwhile, Mark had taken 100 plus photographs. And it just reminds me of our conversations around like the film versus digital dichotomy, and really just solidifies the fact that it's not so much what you use, but the mindset that you bring into it.
Oh, for sure.
The fact that it's guys like Sho go into the woods and they'll just stop and for minutes or however long, for quite a while, they'll look at the moss on the trees, or they'll use all of their senses and truly go into those forest bathing practices and really feel vitalized by the natural world that's around them. That which is something that you don't really see all that often in the United States here, where we are so focused on capturing the next great photograph rather than enjoying our time in nature and slowing down. I mean, before we started recording, you talked about we were talking about the Landscape Photographers Worldwide Discord.
Yeah.
And I see on there, like, people talking about having 5,000 photographs from one trip. And I'm just thinking, like, how could you do that? Like, to me, that just doesn't align with what I want to do while in nature. That's more doing things in nature than it is being in nature. And obviously different strokes for different folks, but it's one of those things that I don't know. I just couldn't imagine doing it. I so much more aligned with the slower approach that seems to be prevalent in, like you said, in Japan with that forest bathing practice.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it'd be very daunting to have that many images. I just wouldn't really want to look at any of them. There's something about having that smaller number where you feel a little more attached to them. Maybe for a good reason, maybe for a bad reason, but you do get more attached to each image. And maybe if there's an image that you can tell it's almost there, it's not quite there, instead of just easily dismissing it and looking at some other image instead, you really think to yourself, why is it that I'm a little thrown off by this photo I've taken? What is it about it? And sometimes it's something very simple, like just some ever so slight dodging and burning, or maybe there's a slight distracting element that you can, crop out of it or do something along those lines. And you can take that image, you can make it into one that does work. And you do have that attachment to. I feel like if I had a lot of images, I would just very easily dismiss ones where I just didn't get a really good feel for it. And then they'd just be buried forever. I'm looking at his abstract section right now, and I see some frozen pools of water with some leaves are right up my alley. I see some oil on the surface of the water, some of the mesmerizing colors.
In that abstract section, on the first row, so the top row, the right-hand side, you have the snowbank that cuts through on the right lower quarter of the image, or right lower half of the image. I love that composition.
Yeah.
That is such a unique way of seeing that.
Really nice negative space there, and just a hint of seeing, I can't tell if it's rocks below the surface of the ice or something, with some warm tone there combined with the cool tone of the ice on the surface, and then the warm tone from the various branches, where you just have this very subtle play of warm and cool. And then have that corner, kind of the right side, lower right corner, be just that snowbank where it's just white and just very, very clean. So very, very clean aesthetic, which is really nice. So yeah, that's definitely a very good pick, and very, very, very good work. I'll have to follow him on the gram. Actually, I just clicked follow back. He already was following me. I did not even know. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.